We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Glory UGA podcast, brought to you by our good friends at MyBookie. Make sure to check them out this college football season for all your betting needs. Go to mybookie.ag, sign up for a new account, use our code UGA when you do so, and your first bet is going to be fully covered all the way up to $500. Amazing deal. Don't miss out on it while it lasts. But today, with Georgia coming off a bye this week, I want to look ahead to the rest of the dog schedule and re-rank each remaining game on the schedule from easiest to toughest and explore whether this massive matchup looming ahead of us this week against Alabama is really Georgia's toughest remaining test on the 2025 schedule. But before we get there, guys, if you're a diehard Georgia fan, this show and everything we do in this channel is designed for you. So go ahead and subscribe right now. Hit those notifications so you don't miss any of the content we have coming your way the rest of the season. Like, comment, all that stuff, guys. It really is a huge help as we continue to grow this channel. But all right, so no game to recap this week with Georgia coming off a bye, but I didn't want to leave you guys hanging. It's football season. I know you're hungry for Georgia football content, especially with a game as big as Alabama looming here. And guys, later this week, in a couple of days here, we're going to dive deep into that game with a deep dive game preview, this massive Georgia-Alabama matchup. I have a prediction for you guys later in the week, so plenty of that specifically coming up later this week. We'll talk a little bit about Alabama later on this show as well. And if you rewind back to, I think it was like late May, I did an initial Georgia football 2025 schedule ranking, kind of previewing the 2025 season as we got into the summer months. But, you know, back in May, guys, you're kind of flying blind. That's the time of year where, like, we think we know, but we don't really know what all these teams are going to look like. But now that we have a month of games under our belt, and that is crazy to think, guys. We wait all year for college football season to get here, and it gets here and just flies by. We're a month into the college football season, but that does mean we have a much better idea about all these different teams. Who's good, who's not good, who's okay, who's actually a threat to knock off Georgia this year. So with that in mind, I figured it would be fun and worthwhile to re-rank the remaining games on Georgia's schedule. Go back and look like, hey, where was I right back in May and where was I maybe wrong? So with that, let's dive in, guys. Let's not waste any more time. And I do want to start. So we're going to start with the easiest remaining games, at least how I project them, how I view them right now based off what we know a month into the season, and we'll work our way to the toughest remaining games on Georgia's schedule. Coming in number 8, this is a game that I had about the same spot back in May. I did not anticipate them being very good, and lo and behold, guess what? They're not very good, and that's the Kentucky Wildcats. This game's at home, right? So that helps when Georgia hasn't lost a game inside Sanford Stadium since 2019. That could change this year because we do have some tough tests coming our way here in the coming weeks and months, as in like about a week or so from now, about 6 days from now. But Kentucky, despite the fact that they are coming to Georgia, they're not even good. Kentucky's a terrible football team, guys. Zach Calzada is, I think, year 19 of college football. This guy was playing at Texas A&M pre-COVID. All right. I remember this guy coming out of high school. He's actually from the state of Georgia. I think it was at North Gwinnett. He came from something like that, I want to say. But I remember we were like kind of dabbling, maybe kind of recruiting him. Goes to A&M and then transfers all over the world. Went to Auburn. Never actually played at Auburn. Then went to Incarnate Word. Did a pretty good job there for a couple of years. Then he gets one last shot at the SEC at Kentucky. And it's kind of the way it always is for Kentucky at quarterback. They're always trying to go get a transfer guy to save them because they can't recruit a big-time guy and develop him to be their guy. And it never really works out. It just doesn't, man. So that's where they are with him. Now, I will say their running backs, I kind of like their back. Seth McGowan's a guy that was a pretty big recruit coming to high school not too long ago. Was at Oklahoma, had some off-the-field issues, was good at Oklahoma. He's got a second chance at Kentucky, and he runs with some physicality. He's got some explosiveness in his game. Dante Dowdell also, I think it's a really nice 1-2 punch there in the backfield. But what Kentucky's always kind of hung their hat on. They've never been good on offense. So they had that 1 year with Liam Cohen. What was that, 2021 maybe, where they were pretty good on offense. It's like, okay, maybe they kind of turned the corner. No, not so much. It was kind of just a random anomalous year for them because they're right back to being what Kentucky is. Terrible on offense, usually really good on defense. That's kind of what's kept that program afloat and stable under Mark Stoops. But this year they lost pretty much everybody from last year's team. That was a really, really talented defense. They had a lot of injuries last year, so it didn't work out that well. But this is probably the worst Kentucky defense they've had in a long time. So it's just a bad football team, guys. To give you a frame of reference here, I know, like, when you play these, like, little sisters of the poor, you can't always draw definitive conclusions, as we talked about with Austin Peay. Georgia fans freaking out about what happened against Austin Peay, then what happens, offense looks great against Tennessee, right? You can't always draw all these crazy conclusions, right? But with Kentucky, it's kind of a trend now. In Eastern Michigan, it's a G5 program. It's a MAC team, but not a good MAC team. But Eastern Michigan just put up 461 yards on Kentucky. Kentucky outgained them, but they outgained them by 30 yards. That's what we're talking about here, guys. And they're coming to Sanford Stadium. I know it's touch and go there in Lexington. If you look at Georgia under Kirby Smart in Lexington, those games have been like within usually 10 points. They've been closer games. In Athens, it's blowout city USA, man. Like, it's just never close. It's just never close. So I do not expect that to be different this year. I think this was the worst Kentucky team that we've seen in quite some time. Even, I think worse than last year's. I don't think they had those players defensively. So I don't want to waste any more time on Kentucky. They're terrible. That should be the easiest remaining game of the Power 4 games. I should make sure we say, because we're not going to count Charlotte here. Yeah, we have Charlotte. Okay, they would be the easiest remaining test, but we're not going there. All right, so that's Kentucky number 8. Coming number 7. Now, this is one where I got wrong. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I got this wrong. I thought they would be better than they are. I thought their record might not show it because their schedule was brutal, but I thought that they had some really nice pieces defensively. I thought they had some nice pieces offensively. They had some momentum late last year. I didn't think Florida would be dynamic. I wasn't one of these guys saying they were going to make the playoff like some people out there were projecting, but I did think Florida would look better than what they've looked at this point. I did not see them losing to South Florida. I thought they might lose to LSU. They played them relatively close, but I did not see them losing to South Florida. I did not see their offense looking as bad as their offense has looked. Defensively, they've been all right, but their offense is an absolute train wreck right now. They cannot protect DJ Lagway. And if you watch the Miami game, you saw that up close and personal there. But look, Miami's really good on defense. Like Ruben Bain, Akeem Mesidor, those guys are freaking awesome. So you don't want to say that's going to be the case for Florida every game the rest of the way. But it's not just that game. They had some issues protecting against LSU, even against South Florida. It's just been a problem from the offensive line. It's not been good. DJ Lagway. Now, the one thing I did say about Lagway, all offseason, I'm telling you guys, this guy is physically, he's got the goods, man. From just a physical skill set standpoint, the guy is incredibly gifted. But when you watched him last year, this is what I was kind of saying about him during the offseason. Yes, truly physically awesome, but he didn't see the field all that well last year. But you have to ask yourself, is that because he's a freshman, or is that something that might linger? There were times, I know they went on that run late last year. They beat LSU at home. Guys, he threw 3 balls that should have been picked against LSU last year. I'm talking right in the hands of LSU defenders. They dropped them all. They're right in their hands. Almost like they were so surprised he threw the ball to him because he threw right to him because he didn't see him, and they just dropped the ball. Well, they didn't drop the ball last week. Threw 5 picks, but he didn't see the field well last year at all. Now, what Lagway could do last year and what he has done at times this year is when you dial a play up and guys wide open down the field, he's got a cannon. He can layer the football. He has good accuracy down the field. He can hit those balls, right? But right now they can't protect him to give time for those routes to develop down the field, and he's still not seeing the field. Some of those picks he threw against LSU, dear God. Now, I know they can't run the ball right now. That's the other big problem. I thought they'd be able to run the ball better with Jaden Bond, Jacoby Jackson. I thought both those guys are really good running backs. I thought their offensive line would be at least competent. Hasn't been the case. And when they can't run the ball, Lagway feels he's got to put the Superman cape on and go out there and try to carry this team. He makes ridiculous throws, horrific decisions, and turns the ball over. And it's what are you thinking? So that's the problem. Their offense is a disaster right now. And then defensively, I thought they had some nice pieces, especially Caleb Banks. That guy was a one-man wrecking crew late last season, but he might be out for the season. He got hurt earlier in the year, came back into LSU for a little bit, and then went back out. I don't know if he's going to come back. There's some uncertainty there. I've heard some speculation he might not be coming back this year. I don't know that for sure, but he's banged up right now, and we'll see what happens. If things get really bad for them, he might just do the whole opt-out thing. We've seen that before. That might happen here. And if you look at, I'm looking, okay, when Georgia plays Florida, how difficult would that game be? Right now, Florida has lost 3 in a row, okay? They have Texas at home, and then at A&M, their next 2 games. They are staring at 5 consecutive losses directly in the face, maybe 6, guys. They get Mississippi State at home. And you'd like to think, oh yeah, Florida in the Swamp could beat Mississippi State. Mississippi State's a little bit better this year, guys. We're gonna get to them here in just a minute, but they're a little bit better. I'm not sure that's a surefire win for Florida right now. So there is a world where Florida could lose 5, maybe 6 games in a row heading into the Georgia game. If that is the case, where is the collective mindset of this Florida team? Will Billy Napier still have a job? I don't think so. If that's the case, like they can lose to Texas as long as they don't get blown out. They might get blown out, but as long as they don't get blown out, maybe he keeps his job. But if you lose A&M, you got 5 in a row. But even if he keeps his job through those 2 games, you lose Mississippi State, there's no way, because you have the bye week before Georgia, right? That is the time you want to let somebody go because you have the interim guy has a week to kind of get things under control and kind of figure out something. Now, I will say, if you throw an interim coach in there, do they change the schemes a little bit offensively? They threw some wrinkles in there. I don't know. That can make things a little bit more complicated. But like, if you lose 5, 6 in a row, like, what is the will of that Florida team going to be? Will they even have a will left? I don't know, man. So that's something to certainly watch there. But I just don't think Florida's very good offensively right now. Defensively, I still think they have some decent guys. I think Gums is pretty good on the outside. Tyreek Sapp is solid. He is what he is. Kamani McClain made a nice pick last night, and that was a guy who's a big-time recruit coming out of high school, went to Colorado, and then transferred out, and now he's at Florida. But talented guy, just hasn't been able to get on the field all that much in his career. So I think they have some decent pieces. I think Miles Graham at linebacker is good. Defensively, they're all right. Like, they did everything they needed to do defensively against LSU on the road to give them a chance to win that game. Lagway just couldn't get it done. He threw 5 picks, man, and their offense just can't do anything right now. So I don't know what the answer is there. I don't, because their offensive line can't protect him. When they do protect him, he doesn't see the field very well. And that's where, like, missing all of spring practice, all of fall camp with injuries, that's what comes back to hurt him. That's something that I did have questions about in the offseason when we talked about it. It was like, yeah, I think he's super talented, but if you miss all of – and he should be healthy for the season. But if you miss all of the spring, pretty much all of fall camp with different injuries, for a guy who didn't see the field well last year, is physically gifted, but hasn't really grasped the nuances of playing that position yet, that could be problematic early in the year, and they have some tough games early on, and that's kind of reared its ugly head here. So Florida is in bad shape right now, and I don't know, man. I don't know if they're going to recover by the time they get to that game in Jacksonville. All right, coming in number 6, I would not in any world have had them ahead of Florida in the preseason, but right now I do have the Mississippi State Bizarro Dogs at number 6 on Georgia's remaining schedule against Power 4 teams. I think this offense is good, guys. They're not as talented as some of the other teams on Georgia's schedule. This is a talented offense, though. Blake Shapen, who was the starter at Baylor for a number of years, was the starter to open last season for Mississippi State, got hurt early last year, and then they played a true freshman the rest of the way. And he grew as time went on, but Shapen is the guy. Shapen is a good player. He's a guy that has operated the system. It's an offensive system that's akin to what they run at Tennessee. It's in the same family, the old school Art Briles deep option offense. Of course, like Tennessee, they put their own little twist on it, but that's the core of what they do. So we've seen something similar to that, which hopefully will help to some degree, although that offense kind of tore us up a little bit last week. Different kind of talent, certainly. But Shapen is a good quarterback. He's also got some ability to his game. They will do some design QB run stuff with him, which has given us issues at times. Not the most dynamic runner, but a competent runner. They have 2 studs at running back. Fluff Bothwell coming over from South Alabama. That guy, I watched him last year at South Al. That guy can play, man. And when he transferred to Mississippi State, it's like, okay, well, Mississippi State, how much is that going to matter for them? Well, maybe a little bit, man. The guy's pretty good. And Devon Booth was one of the better running backs in the SEC last year when he was healthy and they were actually giving him carries, and he's back this year. So both those guys, a nice 1-2 punch in the backfield. And you got 2 dynamic receivers. Anthony Evans, we know about him. He was here in Athens. I thought the guy was a dynamic playmaker when he was here. He just didn't get the reps, get the opportunities. Our system's a little bit different than their system. We asked more of our receivers from a blocking standpoint, and he really fell short there. You go back to the Sugar Bowl game, and when Etienne fumbled right there in the red zone early in that game, that was because Anthony Evans just whiffed on the block, right? So he doesn't have to do as much of that in this Mississippi State system. You plug him in there in the slot, which is kind of a premier position in this deep option, old Art Briles offense, and the guy's making plays. He's a playmaker. He's an athletic dude. And you got Brennan Thompson, who's one of the faster guys in the SEC. It's a really nice duo out there at receiver. And defensively, they're not great, but they're respectable on defense. The competition hasn't been great. Yes, they did play Arizona State. That's a good Big 12 team. but they got out early. Like, they got out to a big lead against Arizona State. So Arizona State basically had to abandon the run game until like late in the game. They came out in the second half and started to run the ball a little bit more. They had a lot of success doing that, but they were just trying to throw the ball over the field the first half of the game, and that's not really what they're built to do. They need to be able to run the football. So the competition there and kind of how the Arizona State game went, I don't know if Mississippi State is even close to like good defensively, but they've been respectable of late. So this is a game that Georgia absolutely should win, but you're going to a weird environment. You don't normally play there. We did play there 2 years ago. I would say going there, we played them at night last time we were there, and I don't think that place, even the Cowbells, I don't think it's all that intimidating. It's not that big. The Cowbells, it's almost like maybe your mind just adjusts to it, you adapt to it, sensory adaptation, but it's almost like you don't even notice when you're there. I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's at noon, so that helps. It's not a night game, but so I do think this is a game that Georgia should win, but they are much more capable of pushing us this year than they were last year. And even in Athens last year in the second half, guys, you saw like that offense kind of lit us up a little bit. They're better at receiver. They're better at quarterback this year. So I'm not saying like upset alert, but that game I think is a little bit more difficult than I thought it was coming into the season. All right, next up, coming in number 5. Now I struggle with this one. I went back and forth on these two teams I have at 4 and 5. 1, 2, and 3 I felt pretty good about. 4 and 5 kind of jumbled here. But coming in number 5, I've got the in-state rival Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And look, as I know some of you are like, huh? At number 5? Obviously, I know what happened last year in Athens. Push us to 8 overtimes. I understand that, right? I do think the context of that game gets lost sometimes in terms of how tough our end of the year schedule was. And looking ahead to the SEC Championship game, we also didn't really have reason to believe that Haynes King was even going to play in that game because the week before he played just a handful of snaps and he could not throw the ball more than 4 yards. So I think we were preparing for a different style of offense with Aaron Philo at quarterback, and then Haynes King comes out there and plays every snap. And I think that, I'm sure we prepared for it to a degree, but you only have so much time. And it didn't look like he was going to play that much the week prior against NC State. So I think that caused a little off guard there. So I think there's some context there that gets lost in the shuffle. But they have pushed us 2 years in a row. Even going back to the game at Tech in 2023, that game was probably closer than it should have been. And the reason for it, there's a couple reasons for that, guys. Number one, they are coached to match our physicality. Brent Key, don't like Brent Key, respect Brent Key, though. He's done a really good job. He comes from the Saban tree, right? Yeah, he comes from the Saban tree, old offensive line guy. And he's a Tech guy, and he has built this team like Kirby has on physicality. Like, that is the core of what they do. That is their identity, right? And there's very few teams that can match our physicality. I'm not saying that Tech can match our physicality, but they try to. And they can come closer than most teams that we play because that's what they do. They still don't have the dudes that we have, but they're gritty, they're nasty, and they'll get out there and they will just fight you. And a lot of teams that we play just don't really quite do that or have the capability to do that. And then their style of offense with the quarterback run game and the misdirection they use in their offense is one that has posed issues for us for a couple of years now. Now, early in the year against Marshall and Austin Peay, they ran similar style offenses, and I thought we played those offenses much better, especially against the run. Now, we're talking about Marshall and Austin Peay. So how much do you want to draw from that? Just like I say, you don't want to draw a definitive conclusion that your team sucks off of games like that. You also don't want to draw a definitive conclusion that your team has figured everything out based off games like that. So it was nice to see, and I will say that UMass last year runs a similar style of offense with the quarterback run game, and they gave us fits last year, put up 200 yards plus rushing on us. So to see us, even though it's Marshall off the P, to see us do a better job of defending that style of offense, that was great to see. Okay, now we got to see against better teams, but that was great to see. But that style of offense has certainly posed issues for us. Buster Faulkner, great offensive coordinator at Georgia Tech. I do also think it helps that he spent so much time in the Georgia program as an analyst and has a very strong degree of familiarity with what we do defensively, right? Being out there at practice, being out there in meeting rooms, talking to coaches. I do think he has a pretty strong idea of like where some of the holes and some of the things that give us issues defensively. So I think that certainly helps, and it's part of the reason why they have given us more issues than some other teams have in the past couple of years. But this year's a little bit different, guys. I do think this year Tech has our full 100% undivided attention based off what happened last year, obviously going to 8 overtimes. And also, guys, you look at Tech's schedule. Beating Clemson, and I told you guys, I did an episode on the audio side where I gave my preseason win total best bets, and I told you guys, I can't, in good conscience, myself, put money on Georgia Tech. I cannot put myself in a position to have to root for Georgia Tech. I can't. But if their win total was 7.5 in the preseason, I'm looking at them like, What? They're going to win minimum 8 games. They're probably going to win 9 or 10 games if you look at that schedule. And I said, if they can beat Tech at home, or if they can beat Clemson at home, like, watch out. Look at their schedule the rest of the way, guys, before they play Georgia. There is not an impossible chance that they could be undefeated coming into that rivalry game on Thanksgiving weekend. It's not an impossible chance. I mean, that schedule is light the rest of the way. No Miami, no Louisville. They don't have those teams, okay? Their road schedule, very favorable. They got Wake on the road. They got Virginia Tech at home. Wake on the road. They got at Boston College. It should be tricky. I know they lost to Stanford. They're going cross country. Dylan Lonergan, that passing game is really, really good. They have a good offense. Defensively, they're not so great. They got at Duke, which could be tricky. So I'm not saying they're going to be undefeated. Like, there are some spots where they could trip up, but I don't think it's crazy to say they might. Or like come into that Georgia game with one loss, and that game might be like for a playoff spot. So Tech is going to have our full attention in a way I don't think they quite did a year ago. And I know that's crazy to say talking about a rivalry game, but guys, with where Georgia's a program and who we had just played recently, and then looking at the SEC championship game the following week, like, yeah, you want to beat Tech, right? And you're looking at that game, it's a rivalry game, but did we feel the same way about the Tech did coming into that game? Probably not. I don't think that will be the case this year. In this game, like, it's not going to be in Athens, okay? So there's that. You can say, well, Tyler, this game should probably be a little higher in schedule. It's not a home game. True, but it's still going to be a heavily partial Georgia crowd, in my opinion. Like, I know it's not a Bobby Dodd. If it's a Bobby Dodd, Georgia always has got, 70+% of the crowd there. I think it'll be similar inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I think it'll be similar. So I don't think it's going to be like a road environment. We've played in that stadium quite a bit, guys. We have some familiarity there. And then Tech still isn't great on defense. They're physical, but they don't have a lot of dudes on that side of the ball. They don't have a lot of game changers there, and I still think we have a pretty significant talent edge over them if you look at the entirety of the roster. Now, if you wanted to argue this Tech game should be higher, maybe number 4 or even number 3, you wouldn't get too much argument from me. I don't think there's much of an argument to have it at number 3, maybe. But I can see the argument for number 4. But right now, I got them coming at number 5, and let me explain why. Because I went back and forth with 4 and 5. So Tech at 5. At number 4, I've got the Ole Miss Rebels. And I know what some of you would say, well, Tyler, that game's at home. Tech is not a home game, so wouldn't the Tech game be a tougher game? And look at how many issues they gave us last year. Well, guys, Ole Miss actually did beat us last year, and like it wasn't even close. I know like we had some injury situations, and it was on the road. Like I get that, but that game, I mean, that was as bad of a beating as I've seen Georgia take under Kirby Smart since like 2016, like maybe ever. Did we even get beat that bad in 2016? I don't think we did by anybody. Like, not that bad. So that was a tough game to watch. Maybe going back to that Ole Miss game in 2016 might have been it, right? But I know this game's at home. But if you look at where Ole Miss is right now, with Trinidad Chambliss at cornerback, the transfer from freaking Ferris State, who's taken over Austin Simmons, who was banged up, and I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback, guys. Because Austin Simmons is supposed to be the guy, supposed to be this great quarterback. We saw him in that one series against us last year, led him on a touchdown drive when Dart went down with an injury for a drive. And everyone thought he was going to be great this year, and he's been pretty good. But Chambliss, I think he's been better. I know like Tulane's a G5 team. It's a good G5 program, guys, and he was really good against Arkansas last week too. I don't know, man. They don't have a quarterback competition, a quarterback conundrum on their hands right now because Chambliss is playing lights out, and he gives them more in the run game than Austin Simmons does. Simmons is a good athlete, but he's not as big as Chambliss. I don't think they want to run him as much. He's also turned the ball over way too much this season. So I don't know what that's going to look like. But if Chambliss continues to be the guy, which I don't think is crazy, if I'm Lane Kiffin, I have a really hard time putting this guy on the bench right now. I don't know, man. He's playing really well. But with him at quarterback, they use a lot of the QB run game like Georgia Tech does, right? Not the exact same style QB run game that Tech does that's given us so many issues, but QB run game in general with misdirection has given us issues in years past, guys. Like you name the team. Again, UMass, Auburn, Tech, Alabama with Jalen Milroe. Those teams have given us issues, and Chambliss at quarterback, Ole Miss can do a lot of those things. And comparing them to Tech, they just have a lot more playmakers on offense than Georgia Tech does. They do. I mean, Tech's got some decent guys. Like Malik Rutherford is a good player out wide. Rivers transfers pretty good. Canyon's solid. But you lose Eric Singleton Jr., and Ole Miss has got some dudes over there, man. I mean, you got Caden Lee, still a good player. You got Stribling coming over from Oklahoma State is their leading receiver last year. They've got some dynamic playmakers offensively. So, yes, they run an offense that can pose similar issues to us the way that Tech does, but they do it with, in my opinion, more talented players. Now, the thing with Ole Miss is they're nowhere near as good on defense as they were a year ago. They probably should have lost to Arkansas. Arkansas put up a bunch of yards on them. Arkansas's offense is really good. They just, again, aren't good on defense. But they went out and like Tulane gets a G5 program. It's a good G5 program though, and they just stifled Tulane. Tulane had a little over 200 yards total offense. Ole Miss completely beat them down 45-10 in that game. So I think Ole Miss, by slight shades, I would categorize that as a slightly tougher game than Georgia Tech remaining on Georgia's schedule. But again, if you want to have Tech at 4 and Ole Miss at 5, I'm not going to put up too much of a fight there. I just think that they run similar style offenses. Both defenses don't impress me that much right now. And I think the Ole Miss just runs a similar style offense, that type of offense that gives us issues with better players or more playmakers to work with. So that's why I would give Ole Miss the slight edge there, even though that game is at home. All right, moving inside the top 3 here. Coming in number 3 at the Texas Longhorns. Maybe the best defense in the country. Defensively, they are lights out, man. They've got dudes upon dudes upon dudes at every level of the defense. Anthony Miller Jr. is probably a first-round draft pick. Colin Simmons is going to be a first-round draft pick. Trey Moore moving off the ball is having a better year this year than he did a year ago. They are freaking awesome. They barely gave 100 yards to Sam Houston State. Look, I know it's Sam Houston State, and Sam Houston State's not even good this year, but that's still pretty impressive. But as has been the case all season, the questions on this Texas team are nothing about the defense. They're great. It's the offense. It's Arch Manning. They looked much better. Arch looked much better against Sam Houston State. Finally had a game where he didn't look like he was a complete and utter liability out there. So maybe that's something to build on. Maybe that's a sign of things to come. Maybe he's found his confidence and things are about to click now. I don't know. I need to see that, though, against real competition. Because Sam Houston State guys right now, let's just be real, it's not real competition, right? I need to see that. So they go to Florida here in a couple of weeks, and that's going to be a test. Because Florida's not great offensively, but they're still good on defense, on the road, in the swamp. That's a test for Arch Manning. We'll see. We'll see if he's improved when we get to that point in that game. But still some very serious questions. It's not just Arch Manning. It's the playmakers around him. I don't think they're not as good at receiver. Ryan Wingo's the guy that they were hoping was to take that next step. He was a big-time 5-star guy coming out of high school. He was a freshman last year and didn't really show any signs early in the year. Played better, had his biggest game of probably his career, I guess, at this point against Sam Houston State. But again, Sam Houston State, we'll see. How does that translate against better competition? But they're just not as good at receiver. Running back have been banged up. They have not been able to really run the ball that effectively this year. Weisner was the guy that kind of took over, was the guy late last year, but he's kind of been in and out of the lineup. You got C.J. Baxter back, which I thought would kind of give them a boost, but he hasn't quite been the guy that they thought he was going to be coming out of high school. He's still coming off an injury, which can be tough. So I think Texas, if you look at them this year, defensively, they're freaking awesome. Offensively, they've taken a step back. They weren't elite offensively last year, but they were very good. I don't think this Texas team is as good as they were a year ago. I think this Georgia team is better than we were a year ago. Some of you might disagree. I think that we're better. I think we can run the ball better. I think we're better up front defensively. I think that we're better at linebacker. I think we're deeper there. So Texas is not as good in my opinion. Georgia's better this year in my opinion. Georgia beat Texas twice last year. Once in Austin, once in the SEC Championship game. Now we get them at home. This is going to be a tough test. Texas is one of the most talented teams in the country. This is not a gimme game by any stretch of the imagination. Texas could absolutely win this game. And in the preseason, I did predict that Georgia, this was the most likely game that Georgia would lose. But now I'm backing off that ever so slightly. I think this is absolutely a game that Georgia could lose. No doubt about it. Texas is talented. Texas is awesome on defense. But with the struggles they've had offensively, and with the uncertainty around Arch Manning and the just, I don't say lack of playmakers, but the lack of dynamic playmakers, at least compared to what they had last year offensively, and some concerns about the run game, I just don't think this Texas team is as good. I think Georgia's a little bit better than we were last year. Beat them twice last year. I think Georgia gets them again this year. We'll see, though. Obviously, that'd be a tough game. All right, coming in number 2. I strongly considered having this as the number 1 toughest game left on Georgia's remaining schedule. I strongly considered it, guys. Like, I kind of went back and forth on this. But ultimately, I decided to put Auburn at number 2. All right? Let's talk about Auburn. Now, some of you might think this is a little high. Some of you might have Texas at number 2. In fact, I would imagine a lot of you probably do have Texas at number 2. But hear me out here, right? I don't think it's crazy to have Texas at 2 if you do. I don't think it's crazy. But hear me out on why I have Auburn at number 2. First off, Auburn is better this year. They have impressed me this season. Week 1 against Baylor, I think Baylor's a good Big 12 team. They're not great defensively. It's a dynamic Baylor offense. And Auburn went in there, and it wasn't even particularly close. They just kind of took it to Baylor, right? They played Oklahoma yesterday. You might have watched some of that game. Maybe watched all of that game. I watched every snap of that game. I'm not going to say they should have won that game. It's hard to say when you give up 9 sacks, which is what they did, that you should have won a game. But despite giving up 9 sacks against Oklahoma, they lost the game by 7. And if you watch the game, what ended up ultimately being the decisive touchdown shouldn't have been allowed to be a touchdown because it was a deceptive play. It was a smart play if you can get away with it. But if you missed it, you've probably seen it by now. But it was Isaiah Satania, the transfer from Arkansas, now at Oklahoma. On a play, he never went off the field, but he kind of walked. He had the body language. He was walking off the field, like to sub out, and he stops like right before the sideline, and he just stops there, and he's standing there, right? And they're going, hurry up, right? And so the Auburn defense loses track of him. They don't see him, and they snap the ball. No one's out there, wide open, throw a touchdown. Every official that I've heard in the aftermath of that game, so that was a legal play. It was a deception. Even if you don't go out of bounds, like if you give the impression that you're going out of bounds, then you're trying to deceive the defense with substitution and try to take advantage of that situation, and it should have been a 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty. In fact, the SEC earlier today released a statement saying, yeah, we got that one wrong. So they lost by 7. In fact, they were down by 5. There was the final ninth and final sack of the game was for a safety, which was like the ultimate backdoor cover, by the way. They have 6.5. Oklahoma was 3 by 6.5, and that thing went final. And I had some money on that one, so let's go. But they had the ball, right? Down 5, ended up losing by 7. Left that touchdown. Does Auburn win? Maybe. Changes the complexion of the game. But regardless, whether they should have won or not, they didn't. But they still looked better. Okay, they are legit on defense. Auburn is really good on defense. They have some game wreckers up front, in particular Keldrick Falk. It's probably going to be a first-round draft pick rushing the passer, guys. Guy is awesome. He was awesome last year. He's taking a step. He is a game wrecker, absolutely. They're really good against the run. They really held Oklahoma's run game in check. John Mateer couldn't really do much against some of the run game, and he's a dynamic runner. And then if you look at them offensively, now Jackson Arnold is erratic. Like, you never know what you're going to get from Jackson Arnold. You don't, right? But he is a dynamic athlete. He is a big-time threat with his legs. And if you look at Hugh Freeze's offenses, historically, I know like they have this weird, like somebody's calling plays on first down, somebody's calling on second, somebody's calling on third. It's crazy, but it's still kind of the Hugh Freeze offense, right? It's a heavy RPO offense, and Jackson Arnold and that Hugh Freeze combination is the type of combination with that type of quarterback in the Hugh Freeze style of offense that has given us issues. A lot like Tech, a lot like Ole Miss, right? Go back to like when we played them in 2016, all the misdirection, quarterback run game stuff, RPO stuff. Get your eyes all over the place, create eye discipline violations, which we had been better at earlier in the year. It got us more in the secondary last week than it did the linebacker. Linebacker at times, that got us against Tennessee, so that's still something that has been an issue for us. Like, we're almost like over-aggressive in pursuit sometimes. We get our eyes on the wrong place. So that is a concern. They also have the second leading rusher in the SEC in Jeremiah Cobb. Arnold himself is a big-time threat running the football, whether that's design QB run stuff, whether that's scrambles. And they have some very scary weapons on the outside. Cam Coleman is a stud out wide receiver. Malcolm Simmons is really good. Eric Singleton Jr. coming from Georgia Tech, obviously a dynamic playmaker in his own right. The issue for the Auburn offense is Jackson Arnold's a liability as a passer going through progressions. He makes really poor decisions. He does not see the field well at all. But if you can get the run game going, you mitigate that because they can do some RPO stuff where he's reading one defender. You get the run game going, you have to start rolling safeties in the box, try to take away the run game. You get one-on-one on the outside. A guys like Cam Coleman, he's going to throw it up. Cam Coleman's a big, physical, athletic guy. He's just going to go get it. And he can throw a good deep ball. He's got a good arm. It's just, if you give him in third and long, going through progressions, that's where he's a problem. Like, he'll throw the ball to the other team. He does that all the time. But if they can get the run game going, right, the way that they want to, all of a sudden it's a very, very different animal. And look at the context around this game, guys. I think Auburn's a lot better. I think they do some things offensively that hurt us. I think defensively, they have some game wreckers up front. You've seen some of the issues we've had on the right side of the offensive line. We played them in a couple of weeks. Hopefully, coming out of this bye week going to Alabama, we get some of those issues fixed. But it's still a concern when they have some of the guys that can rush the passer the way they do, and we've had some issues that we've had on the right side of the offensive line. That's a concern. Then it's in one of the more hostile environments that you can play in the country. We were just in Knoxville. That was as good of an environment as I've ever seen. But I've been in a bunch of crazy hostile environments in Jordan here. I have a lot of respect for that stadium. Don't like Auburn, but that stadium is a very tough place to play. And it's at night. It's a guaranteed night game. All right? It's already been announced. We haven't played a true night game there in a minute, guys. So if you think about all that context, Auburn being better, doing some things offensively give us issues, some of the matchups defensively with their pass rushers, at night, hostile environment, strong argument for number one, guys. I think it's a very strong argument to have that number one. However, ultimately, went back and forth between Auburn and Alabama, and I settled on Alabama. The matchup we got coming up here in less than a week as the toughest remaining game on Georgia's schedule. And I do, again, I think there's an argument for Auburn, maybe even for Texas. I would listen to that. But here's why I settled on Alabama as the toughest remaining game on Georgia's schedule. Number one, from a pure talent standpoint, Alabama is the most talented team left on our schedule from an overall pure talent standpoint. If you look at the blue chip ratio, number of 4 and 5 stars on the roster, they're number one in the country, tied with Ohio State. We're number two, or I guess number three. We're behind those two. So we're right there with them, but this is an incredibly talented football team. Now, I do not think that they pose some of the matchup issues this year the way they have the past 2 years for us offensively with Jalen Milroe at quarterback. Ty Simpson's a good athlete. He can run the football. They can do some QB run stuff with him, but he's not Jalen Milroe. He's not that level of a threat with his legs. But it's still, again, an extremely talented overall football team. You could argue that Texas is maybe just as talented, right? And you could also argue with Tyler. I mean, Auburn's on the road. Alabama's at home. We haven't lost at home since 2017, or I'm sorry, 2019. So why did you have Alabama at number one? Well, guys, beyond the talent edge that they have over other teams on our schedule, with the exception of maybe arguably Texas, it's the mental side of this that puts it over the top for me when looking at the remaining games on our schedule and comparing the relative difficulty. We, Georgia, we are in the head of every other team left in our schedule. We are the boogeyman, right? To every other team left in our schedule, not named Alabama, Georgia is the boogeyman, right? We've won 7 straight against Tech. Yeah, they almost beat us last year, but they didn't. We beat them 7 straight times. We've won 8 straight against Auburn. We've won 4 straight and 7 of the last 8 against Florida. We beat Texas twice last year, including with the backup quarterback in the second half of the SEC championship game. And sure, Ole Miss got us last year. There's some injury situations there, but last time they were in Athens, we beat them 52-17. And Ole Miss does not make a habit of beating Georgia. Good for you guys. You got us one time last year. But we are still the boogeyman for every other team left on our schedule. Doesn't mean they can't beat us. Like NIL, portal, leveling effect, we know this, but we are in their heads. We own the mental aspect of every other matchup left on our schedule, sans Alabama. We expect to beat all those other teams. And those other teams, they build that matchup up in their heads to the point that it sometimes affects their play, right? You get too much anxiety, right? It gets in their head, absolutely. But it's the opposite with Bama. I hate to say it, guys. I mean, look, I hate it. I hate it. But let's just be real. Bama has been our boogeyman. Like, again, like we've been the boogeyman for everybody else. They are our boogeyman. Like, they flipped the script on us, guys. They have. I mean, early in the Kirby years, you go back, like 2017, a national championship game. I hate to even think about that game, but look, Alabama early on in Kirby's tenure was just the more talented team because Saban had that roster built out for years. Kirby was in the process of putting his roster together to get to the point where he's at Alabama. So 2017, 2018, the Bama teams were just more talented. And I thought that we did a heck of a job of just pushing those teams and almost winning those games. I thought that was the sign of like how good of a coach Kirby is, that with lesser talent was able to push those superior talented Alabama teams. But that hasn't been the case since at least 2021, right? And yeah, we won the national championship game in 2021. Let's go, baby. I'll never forget that night. But we're still only 1-3 in our last 4 matchups against Alabama, and I think that we've had the better team in all 4 of those matchups. I believe it, guys. I know we lost in 2024 in the SEC championship, or I'm sorry, 2023, the SEC championship game. We were the better football team, but it's in our heads, man. And we made uncharacteristic mistakes. We coached in an uncharacteristic way against them, in a way that we don't against anyone else. Same thing last year, guys. Look how this season ended up. Yeah, we lost them. We lost Bama on the road, but we were the better football team. Not that night. Give them credit. They beat us, man. They played a better, cleaner game than we did, but we self-destructed. We played in a way and made mistakes that are so uncharacteristic of the way that we play on a game in, game out basis. We coach differently. We coach more passively. I don't think it's a stretch to say that we've coached scared against Alabama, defensively at least, the past 2 years. I know Jalen Milroe posted some threats that kind of gave us some concerns, but we were far too passive in the way that we played them. Second half against Alabama, we came out after halftime and said, no, let's be more aggressive. And oh, you know what? Yeah, we almost came back and won the game. What would have happened if we would have done that from the get-go? I would hope that we've learned our lesson at this point. But I thought we'd learn our lesson playing really passively defensively for too much of that game in 2023 in the SEC title game. And we didn't. We came out basically the same thing to open the game in 2024 last year. So hopefully we've learned our lesson this year. I don't know, man. I don't know. Especially with Jalen Milroe not being a part of this team anymore and not having that level of a threat from their quarterback position as a runner. But it's in our heads, man. It's in our heads. We make those mistakes and we don't make it against other teams. And I know you could argue, well, Bama makes you make those mistakes. Guys, some of the mistakes we made last year were just purely on us. Dropping balls, Carson Beck throwing interceptions, like, well, what are you doing? Types of trying to force things, eye discipline issues, like Malachi Starks, one of the best player in your team, one of the best players in your team, first round draft pick, getting fooled, eye discipline, giving up a touchdown. When they set up a play, they scheme it up for him to be one-on-one with Jalen Milroe on the edge there. If Milroe pulls it and he gets fooled inside, takes a false step, rest is history with a guy like Jalen Milroe. We don't do those things like that against other teams. We don't coach that way against other teams. So hopefully we can put it out of our heads. Hopefully being at home for the first time in a decade against Alabama will certainly help with that. Hopefully we'll come out and take the fight to them. Hopefully we'll come out expecting to win in a way that we just haven't really against Alabama, maybe ever in the Kirby Smart era. But until I see that match with the talent that Bama has on this roster, even though I don't think they pose some of the matchup issues they've posed to us in the past, I still have to say this is the toughest remaining game of the schedule, even if it is at home at night. It's the mental component, guys. They are the boogeyman for us, the way that we have been for every other team. And until I see that change, I can't, in good conscience, say that any other team is going to pose more of a threat to us than Alabama will here in a couple of days. So there you go, guys. That's my re-ranking of the remaining games on Georgia's 2025 schedule. Now that we have a lot more information to operate off of, but let me know what you guys think. Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Do you think Bama is still the toughest ranked game in the schedule? Am I too low on Texas? Am I too high on Auburn? What I get right, what I get wrong, let me know, guys. But thank you guys so much for being here. I greatly appreciate it. Again, if you're a diehard Georgia fan, this is the kind of content you can expect on this channel. So go ahead, subscribe right now, hit those notifications, like, comment. Thank you guys. Greatly appreciate you. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs.
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.